to my channel, Pen to Paper, or maybe this is your first time stopping by, so thank you for doing so. Today I wanted to tackle the mid-year freakout tag. I've been seeing this tag all around BookTube for the last couple weeks, and I just thought it was so fun that I just had to do it myself. So, there's just a lot of tags that are great out there, but I can't do all of them because not only am I a booktuber now, but I am also, and started off as an author tuber. So I do try to split my time half and half between each, but this is the week for BookTube and I'm really excited. So let's get into the questions. What is the best book you've read so far this year? I'd have to say hands down The Dark Days Club, which is written by Allison Goodman. Actually, I have the book right here. And I gave this 5 stars. I loved everything about it. It's a fantasy set in the Regency world of like Jane Austen time period. And I'm already a huge Jane Austen fan, so to put fantasy and that time period together is a dream come true. And I love the characters and the settings and the magic. Everything's perfect. Next question is, what is the best sequel I've read this year? And that was Crooked Kingdom. Again, that book I gave 5 stars. It was so well written. There was so much going on, and yet somehow you're able to follow it all together. And so much emotion, so much plot, so much of everything, but it was all amazing. So, third question is, the third question is, what is the one new release you really want to read? And that I've chosen The Mask of Mirrors. And I heard about this one through Leslie at The Nerdy Narrative. She did a whole live discussion on this book because she was book buddy reading it with a few other booktubers, and it caught my attention immediately. It's something to do, I actually don't even really know what this story is about too much, but having to do with courts and the deceit that can be, I guess, in a court. See, I obviously don't know anything about the book, but they just sold me on it so well. I loved it, and I couldn't stay for the whole thing because they were doing spoilers. But I will definitely put down The Nerdy Narrative down below as a channel mention. You should definitely go check her out. She is amazing. Number 4 is the most anticipated release of the second half of the year. And for this, I chose Shallow Waters by Anita Kopax. I'm not really sure when it's coming out soon. But it sounds really interesting because it's about this black mermaid deity called Yomaha or Yomaya, who kind of watched over the Africans being taken from Africa to America to slavery. She would watch over them, and it's about her journey doing that. And supposedly there's Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass in the book, which those two are major historical figures in the anti-slavery movement. So that sounds really interesting. Mermaid, anti-slavery, all that. It sounds really cool. Number 5 is the biggest disappointing read of the year. And I'm really sad to say this one because I love Sarah J. Maas in general. I've loved every single one of her books, except I find the first one of this series, A Court of Thorns and Roses, and then A Court of Frost and Starlight, which was the bridge novella from the original trilogy to, I guess, this new trilogy, or whatever we're calling the rest of the series. Those were okay, but this, although the ending was amazing, I just got so bogged down by a lot of, not info dump, well, I guess some parts were info dump, but just so much of repeating parts, and it's like 735 pages, so authors, if you're watching this, maybe steer clear from a 700-page book. I bet you can break that down even more and get rid of some parts that don't need to be there. because even traditionally published books can do that and be better for it. So unfortunately, this was my biggest disappointment. Not that I hated it, I did like some aspects of it, but it did not meet my expectations at all of what I thought it would be, especially after book 2 and book 3 of the original trilogy. 6 is what is your biggest surprise of the year? And for that, I chose Stephen King's On Writing, and half of it is kind of a biography, and then the other half are what he has to say about writing and the craft of writing. I guess I'm calling this my biggest surprise because I had no clue what to expect, and I've never read any fiction of Stephen King whatsoever. I am remedying that. I'm reading The Stand in August, and then I did pick The Gunslinger as a book that people could vote on for the Rambling Readers. It's a group. We're a group now. I think I'm the 5th newest member in this group, and we are trying to pick a group book for our next quarter, and everyone gets to vote on it, so you should totally do that. I will put down the votes down below, and you let me know what book we should be reading. But The Gunslinger is on that one, and I chose that one as a nomination because, again, of the nerdy narrative. She started reading The Gunslinger and said how amazing it was, and I think she's now on book 4 or book 5 of the whole series. So yeah, I'm really excited to get into his fiction, but this is the first taste I've had of King ever. So I guess I just didn't know what to expect. I wasn't too sure if it was supposed to be scary. It wasn't. It's not horror. He just writes about writing. But everything he said about writing, I loved and I could relate to, and it was very logical and simple yet true. And so I think from whatever I have read, books on writing, I would say this is the number one, for sure. I haven't read very many nonfiction books on writing, but so far from what I've read, this would be it. Number 7 is what are your new favorite authors of the year? So I have 2. One is self-published or indie, and the other is traditionally published. For the indie author, I picked David Gosselin, and he is the author of the Bevan Jones series. Bevan Jones is this inspector who solves crimes, and I really enjoyed his work. And they had like a real super Agatha Christie feel to them, which I love Agatha Christie. And he's Canadian and he's local, so that was really neat reading about places that I know of or I have been to. Yeah, I really enjoyed his work. And okay, so I've frozen this frame here because I originally chose a different traditionally published author as my favorite author so far of the year, but I changed my mind because, of course, I've been raving about Leigh Bardugo's Six of Crows duology, and also the Wonder Woman that she put out, that I talked about, earlier this year. Of course, I'm going to pick her. I don't know why I didn't pick her in the first place. It's almost as if I forgot. Now, of course, as I said, the Shadow and Bone trilogy, not that great, but hey, it was her first work, so we need to cut her some slack, right? Anyways, my favorite traditionally published author of the year so far is Leigh Bardugo. Number 8, I think this is number 8, is your favorite fictional crush of the year. And again, I actually saw the Nerdy Narratives book tag on this and I was like, yes, it's mine too. It's the Darkling from Shadow and Bone trilogy. He was like the only character I loved in that book because all the other characters were bland or very frustrating. But I loved him. He has so many layers and he's so complex, and just the way that the author wrote him was very crush-worthy. So definitely him. And then when I saw the whole show and Ben Barnes playing the Darkling, just wow, brought it to a whole new level. He was perfect. And I know he's the bad guy for now. I'm actually really hoping he gets this kind of redemption arc maybe in the last book of the trilogy. Kind of like, almost reminds me of, what's the guy's name now? Ben in Star Wars, number 9. You know, he's a bad guy throughout the whole thing, but then he gets that great ending. Even though he dies, it's really sad, but I'm kind of hoping he gets the same thing. But even if he doesn't, still super big fictional crush of mine. And in that vein, this is not a new crush of mine because I have read this book before, and it's The Dark Days Club, which I said was my favorite book of the year so far, is Lord Carlston. If you like that dark, brooding man type, then Lord Carlston is also a surefire crush along the same lines of the Darkling. Although with him, you don't quite know in book 1 if he's on the protagonist's side or not, if he's going to harm or is he going to be helpful. So he's also one with lots of layers and interesting character, and there's a lot to discover. So if you like that kind of character, you got those two. Number 9 is favorite characters so far in general. I love Inej from Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I love how black and white she is, but at the same time, she does have a lot of character development in the gray. She still wrestles with her own convictions and how her actions tie into her convictions or how they don't. And what she believes very much dictates her actions. I just find her such an interesting character with a very strong moral character. But at the same time, she's not a prude. She's not someone who kind of shoves it in other people's faces. She's real, and she's honest with herself. And she doesn't think she's better than everyone else. But there's a very beautiful quality to her that I really enjoyed reading. Number 10, a book that made you cry. You guys, I have to tell you, I do not cry easily in books or in movies. So I came very close to several tears when I read Crooked Kingdom, specifically at the end. And it was just a scene that I was not expecting. I'm not going to say it out here because it is a spoiler. But it was sad, and I think tears welled up in my eyes. I didn't quite cry, but it was very close. Book, I think this is number 11, is a book that made you happy. And for that, I chose Wonder Woman Warbringer by also Leigh Bardugo, who writes the Shadow and Bone trilogy and the Six of Crows duology. It made me smile, that book, the whole thing. It was pretty fast-paced. I liked the character of Wonder Woman, Diana, and just, it made me smile. The character was close to the movie, which I loved, and yeah, it made me laugh in a few places, but definitely made me smile and laugh, I think, the most out of all the books I've read this year. Number 12, what is a book that was beautiful that you read or someone gave to you? So again, not sure if it's cover related or content related, but I'm going to go first with covers. I found the most beautiful covers for books this year was the Shadow of the Fox series by Julie Kagawa. So I read Shadow of the Fox and Soul of the Sword. I love the covers. I think they're gorgeous. I love the colors. And for Shadow of the Fox, it's this beautiful fox-shaped mask that takes center stage. And then with Soul of the Sword, you have the sword that takes center stage on the cover, but it's a beautiful aquamarine teal color for the cover. So I love the covers. I thought they were very beautiful. And then as for content, I chose The Dearly Beloved, and that book, it was beautiful in the sense that this is a debut novel, and the writing was so lyrical and fluid, and it dealt a lot with two men called to the ministry. One, his wife, her father was a minister, but her husband did not come from that background at all, and yet he was called to the ministry, and I think he's the one that didn't quite believe that didn't seem to quite have a personal relationship with God, but he definitely saw religion as the answer to a lot of social injustices. And then we have the other man who is the other character who is quite more intellectually inclined, but his wife had wanted nothing to do with God, and he even knew that before she was married. So it just follows these two couples and how they come to the church together and minister to the people in the church and in the community, but also about their personal lives and how they intertwine in their struggles and how faith and life kind of came together for those two. So the writing, the content itself was very good, but the writing itself was very beautiful. Last question is, what are the need to read books, the books that I really need to read by the end of this year? So there are quite a few, but the ones that I chose, okay, so for single books are Betty. I've heard so much about this one in the horror community, so Dark Between Pages, Brad Proctor, Nerdy Narrative, J. Maddox. I believe they've all read it or have talked about it and just saying how an amazing story it is, so I gotta go pick that up. And then also, what is it now? Songbirds and Stray Dogs. So Brad Proctor and Jay Maddox, they have started their own podcast called Paper Cuts, and she was the first guest, and that was an amazing show. Really enjoyed it, and that sounds like a very interesting read as well that they were praising, and so I definitely felt drawn to that. So I want to read that by the end of this year. Other ones that I must read, of course, are the ones, The Mask in the Mirror, the one that I heard from Nerdy Narrative, and also oh yeah, for the most anticipated release that I said, it was Shallow Waters about the Black Mermaid deity. I don't need to read that by the end of this year. I might only get to it next year because there's a lot of books that I already have on my TBRs for the next few months. So yeah, it can wait. But for a series now that I really want to get to this year, I may not finish them by the end of this year, but I will definitely be going through them. So the number one series is The Dark Days Club. I've already read The Dark Days Club 1 and 2, which I reread number 1 this past May. But I loved 1 and 2 so much that I had to reread them because I had just bought the third one this past year. So I'm rereading that series. And then also another series I really want to finish is the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. I started that series a year or two ago, and I stopped at the second book. So I think the next book now is The King's Cage, and that there's 2 more books left. So I really want to get to that because I enjoy that story. And the last series that I want to go through, but I know is definitely, I'm not going to finish it by this year, is the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. So those are all my books. I hope you enjoyed this tag and the choices that I picked for these prompts. It's been a lot of fun looking back over the year and seeing what has made me cry, what has made me happy, my disappointments, surprises, favorite books. It was a great first half of the year, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what my second half of the year is like. I'm actually right now, tonight, in the middle of I'm about to say my book, Scratches by Joshua Marcella, and I started it earlier this evening. I will finish it tonight because I'm doing that for the Olympic Readathon right now. I'm in the thick of it, and I've got 2 more days, and then that's it. So I need to finish that tonight so I can do 1 more book for Monday and Tuesday. Tuesday is the last day. I have to finish that last book and get that points to my team. Go Poseidon. That's my team. Team Poseidon. God of water and horses. Anyways, I'm going to let you all go. Before you do, please like this video if you like the content and subscribe if you want to get a video from me weekly. As I said, I am an author tuber and a booktuber, so I do give author tips and advice on the industry and the craft of writing. And then also I do booktubing because, hey, I started as a reader and I love, love, love books. And being a part of this book community has just reignited that flame so much more. So this is tons of fun. I will see you next week. Hopefully, take care.